Ken with the Cemline company. I'm going to start off by saying no matter what I say here does not override what is in the IOM. So if you have any questions, refer to the IOM directly first. We have our standard semi-instantaneous shell and tube heat exchanger. It's an SSH unit. I'm going to start out by pointing out the componentry on it. This is our controller, which would control the set points, the alarms, high limits, all that. You have your shell and tube heat exchanger. We have our main trap and our drip trap, your control valve, and the circulator. This is not a system circulator. What this circulator does is it circulates the heat through the unit to ensure even temperature throughout. I'm going to start off by telling you what the startup screen is. You have your set points, and you have your system temperature, and then you have what your valve is operating at. Currently, it's giving it a call for 2 volts. You obviously have a power on, your primary high limit, and your secondary high limit. So if these are not lit up, you're not in alarm status. It's showing that you're in power, you have power on it. So going through this, we have just our up and down and menu button and our select button. This is also acts as an alarm silence. So if you're going off on an alarm primary high limit, it gives you a buzzing. You can come through here, hit this, and silence it. I'm going to toggle through the menu right now. So we have our set point. So if you want to make an adjustment to our set point, we hit the enter button. We would either up or down on the arrows, and then you have to re-hit the select button to save it. From there, if you make an adjustment in your set point, we want to make an adjustment on our high limit. You're going to go through the same thing. Come to the menu, hit the select button, up or down on the keys, and then select again. That's giving you your temperature readings for both your primary and secondary sensor. If those have a differential of, I would say, more than 5, you have either a bad sensor or your circ pump is not working. They should be within 1 or 2, and as you can see right here, they're right on each other. That's the quickest way of doing it, and then if you did have an issue, we would tell you to get an ohm reader, read your sensors, and everything else. You go from there. Other than that, I mean, that's pretty much a crash course in it. There's not much to it. It's just a shell and tube heat exchanger with a control valve. You guys have any questions? First thing you do is you hit your menu button 1 time. It gives you your set point. If you wanted to change your set point, you then hit the enter button. Then you would change your set point by using the arrows, and again hitting the select button. If you don't hit the select button, it will not save your settings. So your set point number 1. Now if you set your set point higher or lower, you need to also change your high limits at the same time by going about it the same exact way. In the select button, we currently have it as 10 degrees higher than what your set point is. Typically we would do 10 to 15. So if we're going into an alarm status, you're okay to raise it up another 5 on this and it wouldn't be an issue. So I'm just going to hit the enter button. So from the high limit number 1, what the high limit number 1 is it's a sensor that's going to give you a visual and audio alarm only. It's not going to do anything else. It will periodically go into that high limit and it should adjust itself. It's just depending upon what's going on in the system, you may or may not see that. Going into high limit shouldn't be that big of a deal. High limit number 2. So we would do that. That's up to 150 degrees. We can make that adjustment as needed be also, because I don't believe you guys have any mixing valve on the outlets of these, do you? Mixing valve, you don't temper this water down. What was that?
Okay. Those 2 no, these 2 they do.
Okay. So on that, you're going to want to be a little more careful on what your high limits are set at, because you don't want somebody to get burned, obviously. Differentials, we set those in the factory at 5 degrees. I wouldn't mess with it. Nothing with the differential number 1, but do an adjustment on your high limit number 2. by going about it the same exact way. In the select button, we currently have it as 10 degrees higher than what your set point is. Typically we would do 10 to 15. So if we're going into an alarm status, you're okay to raise it up another 5 on this and it wouldn't be an issue. So I'm just going to hit the enter button. The control valve setting is set for a single valve, which is what you currently have. The last thing to do is if you wanted to check to see if your sensors were acting properly or your circ pump. I mean, with your circ pump, you can typically feel if it's running, but you can also test if it's at. So the 1 volt tells us that it's giving a 1 volt call to open the valve up a little bit to get up to set point of 122. All this is telling you is if you have a single valve, which you do, so we're fine there. So if you wanted to check to see what your sensor readings are, you're going to hold the down button for about 6 seconds. That's going to show you the reading for your primary and your secondary sensors, and we do want those within 5 degrees apart. If it's more than that, you have an issue with either your sensors or your circ pump, and we would go through other diagnostics to kind of figure out which is which. So this right here is your Amarac valve. This is your information that you would need on it. If you have any issues with our units, read the nameplate, which is on the back side of this. It's a little stainless steel nameplate. This has our serial number, and it also refers back to the national board number, which we have on file. This pulls up the file that we have on the unit and how it was built. So we can pull everything up. We don't want the valve information, the pump information, the controller information. We need the serial number right there, 59415. Your PID, your gain, your proportional gain throughout, I wouldn't make changes to that unless you were on the phone with tech support from Cemline. We can walk you through it if you're having issues with the system overshooting or undershooting, and Mike over at our office would be the one to tell you what settings to put that at and go from there. Remote control would be if you have building management, which I'm told you do not have any BACnet, so this is not set up for BACnet. The control output would be with the Siemens, with the Warren Amarac valve, we want a 2 to 10 signal on that, and so this is set up correctly. If you do change that valve out, you do need to contact us to find out what it should be set at. Other than that, there's nothing else in this controller which you would really need to toggle through. Initial settings, diagnostics, and about. That's it. So you could come through here if you wanted to know what Central you had. So there's that, and then that would be all for this controller. There you go.